There is only one you, and your unique talents are a gift to the world. Enjoy as our new associate minister, Rev Sally Robbins, explores how we give the gift of ourselves. Welcome, Sally.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Woo! Got your seatbelts fastened? It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful message. I can't wait to hear what Spirit's going to download through me. I prepare stuff, but that doesn't always happen. So I'd like you to turn to your neighbor and say, I am ready to receive my good.
I am ready to receive my good.
All right. So we're all receiving this morning, right?
Yes.
Did everybody receive your white stone? White stone and a marker. If you did not, please just raise your hand. Our ushers will be happy to. There we go. Got just a few, just a few. Keep your hand up, and because we're going to be doing a wonderful ritual in just a few minutes. And I want everyone to be able to participate. And while they're doing that, shameless plug for my class coming up. Foundations. I am so delighted about this class. Before I became a minister, I took foundations at least 4 times. It was one of those things that you're only supposed to take once to meet your requirements, but I kept taking it. I would move to a different church or a different city, and I took it again. And every time I learned something incredible. Then when I became a minister, I've taught it countless times. And guess what? I kept learning. So even if you've taken foundations, I invite you, or any sort of the basic classes, this is the chance for you to really deepen in those practices and deepen in your understanding of the principles. So join us on Wednesday nights, I think I'm teaching. Honestly, I just moved on Thursday. I don't know what you're... Tuesdays, thank you. Check your calendar, right, Dee? Check your calendar. All right. So thank you. Everybody has their white stone, but I'm going to take a different avenue this morning because, as Devon was saying, we have the unique gift of ourselves to this universe. Do you agree? Yes. That you have unique gifts and talents that only you can bring. And we're all ministers, aren't we? We're all ministering in our own way. And so I know that each one of us, especially those of us who are on this spiritual path, are dedicated and committed to finding that way to express our uniqueness within the oneness. Because even within the oneness, there is a multiplicity, right? We're all different and uniquely the same. And so you and I have that gift to give to the world, and I thought, what better way to end the year and start the new year than to really focus on that? But I always find incredible, wonderful inspiration in a number of ways. God is talking at all times. Do you agree with that? You can be anywhere, and Spirit will give you a message. Well, I was watching a documentary recently about the Eagles, the rock group, the Eagles. Anybody an Eagles fan in this room? And I found so much spiritual principle in that documentary that I just had to share it. Would you mind if you heard a few of the things that I found? All right. So one of the first things they did was they showed Joe Walsh, who joined the band in later years, but he had some wonderful things to say about how when they were touring, they had gone to Chicago, and they were staying at a hotel, and they didn't have anything planned for that evening, and all of a sudden there was a knock on his door. And he opens the door, and in walks John Belushi. And John says, I am taking you out to one of the best places in Chicago, come on. So they go out to this restaurant, very she restaurant, and as they stand there with the maitre d', the maitre d' said to them, "I'm sorry, gentlemen, you have on blue jeans. Only black pants are allowed in this restaurant." So they were turned away, and John and Joe were walking back out to the street. And Joe said, "Well, where else would you like to go?" And John says, "Oh no, we're going back in there. Hang on just a second, I've got an idea." So Joe waits in the alley right next to the restaurant. And all of a sudden, John comes back. He pulls out of a paper bag something he's just bought. It's a can of spray paint, black spray paint. So he goes, "Okay, you first." So he they spray paint each other's jeans. Now they have on black pants. So they go back in, the maitre d' seats them in beautiful Queen Anne tufted chairs. Embroidered, hand-embroidered chairs. So they enjoy a wonderful meal. They get up to leave, and they notice there's some black where the paint has worn off on this beautiful embroidered chair. So Joe said, what we did was we just kind of backed out so that no one would notice, because of course now there's like complete white, or the blue. There's no black there. He said, we were so embarrassed. And yet, here's the spiritual realm. Wherever you go, there you are. You can spray paint all you want, but you are still you, are you not? And so I know that each one of us has had the opportunity to spray paint ourselves. Or am I the only one here that's ever done that? We've all done it a time or two, where we thought that we had to meet some standard. We had to upgrade ourselves in some form. And yet, underneath all of that, we were still us. We were still us. So there were 3 primary lessons that came out of this documentary that I want to share with you today. The first is, know when it's time to move on. Very appropriate for this point in my life. On Thursday, I just moved here to Asheville. Yay! This morning, as I was getting dressed, it was quite an adventure, trying to figure out, had to find the box of shoes. I couldn't find my necklaces, so prayer beads, they fill in. But you know what? It all worked out, because I knew it was time to move on. I had moved to Charlotte 8 months ago, and Spirit was really clear. It's time for you to go to Asheville. And so I contacted the movers, found a place to live, and now I'm living here. The Eagles were in the same boat. They were in the exact same boat, because that what Ernest Holmes calls the divine urge is always pushing us forward. It's always enticing us, encouraging us to move on to something greater than what we are currently experiencing. Amen. Yes. When Don Henley and Glenn Fry, Don Henley grew up in Texas, Glenn Fry grew up in Michigan, and they both met in, they were early on musicians in both of their home areas. And so, but they both had the call to go to Los Angeles. They knew that was where the music scene was happening, and they wanted to be a part of it. So as they were in Los Angeles, they were asked to play because they were each in different bands. But Linda Ronstadt, who was huge at the time, invited them to play in her band. They took her on tour, and they were making really good money finally, really consistent, good money. And they were so excited because they were playing with a world-class musician, Linda, and it was a great gig. And yet, something within them was calling them to move on. They both knew that this was not the end game, that they had to go on and form their own group. And so this took great courage, would you agree? Because here they are making wonderful money doing what many musicians thought would be a fantastic gig. So they approached Linda and said, we're really sorry. We love playing for you. However, it's just not what we are meant to be doing. We're meant to be in our own band. We have to move on. And to her credit, Linda was incredibly supportive. She said, absolutely understand. You guys are fantastic. I hate losing you. However, this is the opportunity for you to go and express who you are. because the gift of them, the gift of Glenn and Don, was something that had to move on. And so know when it's time to move on. The Eagles would not have happened if they had not known that and they had not acted upon it, because it's one thing to know it, right? But then to act on it, that's the real critical factor there. The second lesson that I learned from the Eagles is this: write your own music, or another way, create your own life. Now, Glenn Frey, as I said, grew up in Michigan, Detroit actually. He was playing on the music scene there. He happened to meet Bob Seger, who at that time was a very up and coming and had a couple of hits under his belt. And Bob was also from Michigan. And Bob kind of took Glenn Frey under his arm and said, stick with me, kid, I'll show you the ropes. And one day, Bob said to Glenn, if you really want to make it, if you really want to make it in the music business, you've got to write your own songs. And Glenn said to him, well, that sounds great, but what if I write the songs and they're bad? And Glenn Frey, or Bob Seger, said, they're going to be bad when you first start. That's the whole point. But what the whole point is that you are now getting better and better, because it takes practice. It takes practice to get to that place when you keep on writing, and eventually they become good songs. And so Bob Seger taught Glenn a very important lesson, because I hear a lot of times from people when they approach me either for a counseling session or for a practitioner session, or they say, well, what if I can't do it? Meaning, it's the same thing. What if they're bad? What if I can't do it, what I really dream about? What if I can't make this goal that I'm trying to accomplish? Well, you might have to take some baby steps first. You might have to take some steps and even fall flat on your face. Am I the only one in the room that's fallen flat on her face? No. But that's the whole point, right? We get to that place where we understand that failure is not failure. It's simply a feedback mechanism to say, don't do that again. And then you try something different. So Bob Seger was helping Glenn Frey understand this very basic premise. Write your own songs. Write your own songs. You learn from others, but you go to your own school. Learn from others, but go to your own school. You have this incredible capacity to understand what life wants of you and needs of you, and all you need to do is tune into that. Tune into that wonderful radio station, always playing within. And as soon as you tune that dial, the universe tells you exactly what needs to happen. Write your own songs. So Glenn Frey moves to Los Angeles. He's following his dream, but he's still unclear about how to write a song. Bob had told him to write one, but he was like, do I write with a partner? Do I have to sit down and make time for it? Does the inspiration just come? He wasn't sure what to do. So at that time, he meets Don Henley, and they're looking for a cheap place to live. They found an apartment, a small apartment in a suburb of Los Angeles. They move into this apartment, and being musicians, they would come home very late at night after playing their gigs, usually sleep in. But he said in this particular apartment, something would happen, because they had, as their downstairs neighbor, Jackson Browne, who was writing Dr. My Eyes, his hit. And so Glenn said that every morning they had come in, dragged themselves in late at night. Every morning, though, at 9 a.m., they would hear the tea kettle of Jackson Browne come up through the ceiling. They would hear that tea kettle go off. They would wake them up. And then they would hear Jackson pour himself a cup of tea, then go to his piano and start plunking out the first verse of Dr. My Eyes. And he'd play it once, and he'd play it twice, and he'd play it 3 times. And then he'd play the chorus once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And they'd hear that all coming up through the ceiling. And then the tea kettle would go off again. And then they'd hear pour in a little cup of tea, and then verse, chorus, verse, chorus. And Glenn said, that's when he knew. That's when he knew. He said, that's how you do it. That's how you write a song. This is what it takes to succeed. Elbow grease, time, thought, persistence. Elbow grease, time, thought, persistence. Do you recognize that possibly on the spiritual journey? This might be a key as well. That we think that we're going to get this instant enlightenment and that we're going to achieve this nirvana and life will be smooth as glass after that. That hasn't happened to me. As a matter of fact, the challenges are even larger now that I've succeeded in conquering the smaller ones. And yet, this formula stays the same. It takes elbow grease, time, thought, persistence. You might add in there prayer. And this is the key that he found, even in writing his own song, that he still had to have the necessary elements to make sure that he was doing it the right way. The right way. There is no substitute for these elements, whether it's writing your own song or creating your own life. I've reached 60 and there's still so much stuff that I want to do, I can hardly wait to get up in the morning. But it still takes elbow grease, time, thought, persistence, all of those elements. So the third and final lesson that I learned from the Eagles was this. Your soul's journey will take many detours. I know when I was 18 years old, I remember graduating from high school. I remember once I got my diploma, and although I was going on to college, I vividly remember going, this is as good as it gets. Man, I'm on top. Man, I've done so many wonderful things. I thought that was like the pinnacle. I was so sorely, completely out of touch. Because so much better was waiting for me. There's that old phrase, don't ever let your good get in the way of your better. Because too many times I've settled for my good when my better was right one step further. And so your soul's journey will take many details. Very few of us, I had my whole life mapped out at 18. What I was going to do, how I was going to live, what kind of career I was going to have. It didn't look anything like that when I look back, because I kept taking these detours, which were so much better than the original plan. And now I understand that when a detour shows up, I bless it. I don't curse it, I bless it. Because there's something more for me to understand, something deeper for me to learn from. And I simply acknowledge that maybe this is a detour on the way to something, either what I originally had thought of, or maybe something even better. I don't know a single person who's ended up in the same place they thought they'd be. We've all taken detours, right? We've all taken, most people think that it's a linear straight line to go from your entire life, but most of the time it's this: side step, back step, side step, maybe 2 forward steps, another side step. You don't go in a straight line. That is not how life works. In the late 70s, Don Henley had this prophetic quote. He said, this is not a lifetime career that you can do forever. Because bands back then didn't last very long, like the Beatles. They all broke up. And yet, in 2012, Henley said, we never, in our wildest dreams, figured on being this successful and lasting this long. Even they didn't imagine it at that point. And Joe Walsh, I love this quote. He says, as you live your life, it appears to be anarchy and non-related events. And later, when you look back at it, it looks like a finely crafted novel. And a lot of the Eagles' story is like that. Maybe your story is like that too. It looks like anarchy and a whole lot of chaos in the midst of when you're walking through it, and yet you look back and go, oh, that's why that happened. That makes so much sense now. And here's the spiritual paradox. In order for you to not only survive, but to thrive in this world, you need to surrender your control. I am the former general manager of the universe. Not only could I tell you what was best for my life, I would tell you what was best for your life. And so surrender was a big deal for me. And yet that is the only way that you can make any spiritual progress, right? Is letting go and surrendering. That maybe there is something greater that has an even better idea than you do. And that is the paradox. You make your plans, but you surrender to the greater good. That is true spiritual growth. And while we're on these detours, which are just conditions, right? Because your consciousness is always growing and evolving. When you're on these detours, your passion doesn't ever have to waver. Your conviction doesn't have to falter. And so as we end this year, I know, like you, I get very reflective this time of year. I reflect on 2018, the good that's happened, what I thought I was going to accomplish but didn't, what can I look forward to for next year. And so we're going to be doing what's called the white stone ceremony. I'd like you to take your rock now and hold that in your hand. Because the white stone, if you know anything going back in the back to the biblical and the sacred times where much of our scripture that we study now, you are starting with a clean slate. That's what that rock symbolizes. So the white stone is an ancient ritual. In Jesus' day, when someone served time or in prison or bondage of any kind, they were given a white stone when they were released. And each of us in this room or listening, watching the video, has had some form of bondage, have you not? Maybe even bondage within 2018 that you're finally saying, I'm done with that. I'm ready to release that. And so this white stone is your symbol of your freedom. And all of your past nonsense was a prison to you. And you get to decide today how to move forward. Anything that you can believe and conceive, you know that you can have it. And many people in the Bible and the sacred scriptures, we read stories about people who were given a new name. Saul became Paul. And there's many others that are examples. And so John in Revelation talks about, let anyone who has an ear listen. And this ear he's talking about is not the outer ear, it's the inner ear. And so today I'm going to invite you to listen with your inner ear, because it's always that still small voice that is whispering to us. And we develop this voice by listening intently and then acting upon that. And the second part of that scripture in Revelation, and I will give a white stone, and on the white stone is written a new name that no one knows except the one who receives it. And that's where this ceremony comes from. Because it was believed that when people had overcome and had made their connection with the divine, then they got a new name. And that new name was written on a white stone, and that was given directly to them by God. So you see this freedom from bondage, this freedom even from the old name that you might have called yourself. And it may not even be your given name. Maybe it's a name that you have called yourself in error. Maybe it's an attribute you've given yourself that is clearly not the truth of who you are. This is where you get to choose again. And so that white stone that you're holding there is going to be the repository of your surrender to the inner spirit and the opportunity for you to download what your new name. Now, it could be a word. It could be a phrase. Some people have told me they get a symbol. They think visually and they get a symbol. And so this is the higher consciousness that is speaking to you, the great I am. And I'm going to lead you through a brief meditation that consciously invites spirit into your heart to give you that. Are you ready? All right. So I invite you, just settle into your chair If you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And just take a deep cleansing breath in. And let it out. Let's become still for a minute. And allow God to express through you as you. This white stone that you're holding in your hand, this is a symbol of your new life. See it as a symbol of who you have become, or who you are becoming, or who you would like to become. Feel the presence of God. Know your oneness with God. Know your I amness with God. Feel that loving presence of God in this room as it surrounds and supports us. Know that right where you are, right now where you are, sitting in this seat, you are perfect, you are whole, you are complete, and you are safe. Know that you are encouraged by your fellow travelers. Know that you are loved and appreciated by this spiritual community. This white stone is the promise of a new life. It's the symbol of a clean slate. Whatever has gone in the past, we let it go. This is a moment in which we are now free from all that has bound us, free from the prison which we have put ourselves into. So I invite you to reflect on a new name. It could be that word, it could be a phrase, it could be a scripture, it could be a symbol. Whatever it is, simply allow that to come to you. Let it come to you easily without trying to make it happen. Let this mark your new beginning. Feel the stone in your hand. Let it beckon you. Spirit has decreed a name for you to be written on the stone. What will your life be called from this point forward? And so as you are guided by Spirit, and I invite you to trust in this guidance, as Spirit gives to you in this sacred place, in this moment of truth, an insight into your divine purpose, an insight into your holy essence. And so in that secret place of the Most High, I invite you to allow yourself to hear the new name that God has for you. And as that name becomes clear, just allow yourself to write it. It might be a title. It may be something like published author, or clean and sober, or grateful, or whatever. Perhaps there is a new career, a new title, or a new quality that Spirit is pressing out through you. I ask you to give your ego a few minutes off and let the divine holy self in you come through. Give yourself permission to have a new quality, a new name. Some people write a quality of God, peace, love, holy presence, and take on that new essence of who they are. So just take a moment and listen. If a name has come to you, stay quiet and allow yourself to ask for a deeper understanding, to ask if there are any steps to take. In this moment, allow yourself to simply open to Spirit, to say, God in me reveals my true essence. God in me reveals my next step. God as me lives a joyous, peaceful, fulfilling life. And so I invite you, with whatever download Spirit has done, take your marker and write your new name. Write that word, phrase, whatever has come to you on your white stone. This is the gift that you are giving to the world this year. This is who you are, showing up as only you can be. This is your divine essence, the perfect you, As Dr. Seuss said, there's no one youer than you. No one youer than you. So a thankfulness flows over us as we receive our new name. Along with it comes the power and guidance to achieve all that we desire. This is our new name. We see it, we claim it, we decree it. We are on a path to gaining greater insights, new awareness. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And it starts right here and right now. On this last holy sacred day, this last holy sacred Sunday of 2018, I invite you to take on your new name as you move into 2019 with passion, with clarity, with focus, and with the complete acceptance of who you are as a gift to this universe. I invite you to carry this white stone as a reminder of this promise. And so if you haven't come back into the room yet, I invite you to slowly open your eyes. I've had many, many people, I've done this over the years so many times, and I've had many people tell me that they hold that rock, they keep it in a place that they see it on a regular basis. So I invite you to do that. Don't just tuck it in a drawer. Just take it with you. Remind yourself who you truly are, a gift to this universe. Namaste.
If we have anybody here for the first time, please raise your hand. Welcome, welcome. It's so good to see each one of you here. Welcome to Asheville. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living. And our welcomers have a card, if you would. Fill this card out with your name, email address if you would or like to, and we'll send you a little blurb. But we don't inundate anybody. We send you some really useful information that lets you know what's going on here in the center. And know that this center is open to you. Our hearts are open to you, and we'd love to see you come back. And if you're just passing through, welcome. Take the joy and love, because you'll never be the same once you've been here. So, you're never the same anyway, because it's only the moment, right? So here we are, and it's all good. So, prosperity acceptors. So take out what you're going to give. And what we like to do here is hold it up against your heart and know that whatever you give, as Barbara says, who knows, maybe deeds of trust, gold, jewels, whatever, but just a smile, love is absolutely perfect. And with that, we'll repeat our investment affirmation together. I freely and joyously give from the abundance and fullness of my overflowing wealth, knowing my gift goes with love as it touches and blesses the world. And so it is.